Have you ever felt like your diabetes suddenly became harder to manage? Your blood sugar's all over the place, you're exhausted, you're gaining weight despite doing everything right, and you just don't feel like yourself?
I mean, constantly, but I kind of feel like isn't that just how like everyone feels all the time once they hit like age 30 or something? I'm always tired. It's impossible to shift weight. There's like 100 billion things that can mess up with your blood sugars. And we're all stressed and getting older and looking at screens too much and working too hard. So, yes.
I mean, they're the trickiest symptoms because fatigue and weight gain can be caused by, a lot of things. Many people will automatically blame burnout, stress, aging, diabetes, but there might be another autoimmune condition quietly developing in the background, and this is called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And it's a condition that is more common in type 1 diabetics.
Okay, well, this sounds like something every diabetic should probably know about then. I don't know anything about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the symptoms, how regularly we should be screened, and what to do if we have it.
You live a tiny snack. I thought I could get away with it.
Good. Hello and welcome to Correction Dose, the podcast where we take on a new challenge every month to live our best lives with type 1 diabetes. I'm Kate, a writer and podcaster.
And I'm Tracy, a medical doctor and adventure athlete. We dive into science, stories, practical tips, and expert interviews, covering everything from carbs and exercise to fertility and tech.
Plus, we chat about our own highs and lows, our bruises, and those lovely 2 a.m. alarms, so we can learn to navigate diabetes like pros and hopefully help you do the same. Just a reminder that the content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice.
Kate, shall we dive right in?
Let's do it. First of all, what is Hashimoto's?
All right, so Hashimoto's thyroiditis is an autoimmune disease, and as type 1s, we're all quite familiar with autoimmune disease. But yes, your immune system mistakenly attacks your thyroid gland, and your thyroid gland sits like a little butterfly in your neck, and this thyroid gland produces thyroid hormones, which act like your body's metabolic accelerator. It's like your metabolism it begins in your neck. So the hormones that your thyroid makes, these hormones influence your energy levels, heart rate, body temperature, digestion, mood, weight, cholesterol, your menstrual cycles, your insulin sensitivity. Basically, when this little thyroid gland slows down, everything else slows down.
Wow. Okay. And what is the link with type 1 diabetes? Like, how likely is it that we'll develop this?
So because we have type 1 diabetes and we already have an autoimmune process happening in our bodies, this increases the likelihood that other autoimmune conditions might develop, including, say, Hashimoto's or lupus. But how common is it with type 1 diabetics? Statistics say about 15 to 30% of type 1 diabetics will experience some form of thyroid autoantibodies and like inflammation of your thyroid. So kind of more common than one would think.
So if you're sitting in a room and there's like 10 diabetics, 1 or 2 of them will probably have Hashimoto's.
Yeah, about 1 in 5. And also to know that women in general with all autoimmune diseases are affected more than men. And also the risk of developing another autoimmune condition does increase with the longer duration that you have of diabetes.
Great. That's wonderful. I'm thrilled to hear about that.
And on that note...
I mean, is it not enough that my body attacked my pancreas? Now it's hunting other prey. It just doesn't seem fair.
Exactly.
But anyway, we need to know.
They're over the pancreas. On to the next organ. Let's go. So
go.
So your immune system. Your immune system will create an antibody against your thyroid. So there are two common antibodies that we would measure and use. So we've got an anti-TPO antibody, thyroid peroxidase, anti-thyroid peroxidase antibodies. And this enzyme, its role actually helps the thyroid produce our hormones. And then we have an anti-thyroglobulin autoantibody. And this antibody attacks proteins involved in storing the thyroid hormone. So you don't have to remember the names of the antibodies. Just know that there are two antibodies that we generally measure. And these antibodies go and cause havoc with your thyroid and its ability to function really nicely, and therefore affecting your general metabolism. So over time, the antibodies will go and attack the thyroid. You'll have inflammation developing. The thyroid cells eventually become damaged. The thyroid gland produces less hormone. And then you get a condition called hypothyroidism, which just means that you don't have enough of your functioning thyroid hormone. You could see it the same as when you have hypoglycemia. Hypo means not enough sugar for the glycemia. Hypothyroidism is not enough thyroid hormone to have a good and effective functioning of your body. So you start getting hypothyroidism.
And is Hashimoto's the same as hypothyroidism?
So hypothyroidism, I would see as umbrella, which just basically means not enough thyroid function, or your thyroid is not functioning normally and is not making enough hormone. So there are a few different things that could cause this. So it falls under the umbrella of hypothyroidism. But if you have Hashimoto's, you will have inadequate amounts of thyroid hormone. It's sort of the end stage, because you can have sort of early onset antibodies attacking your thyroid, but you can have perfectly normal amounts of thyroid hormone in and circulating around your body. There's no problems. You're not symptomatic, but you are having an autoimmune process. But Hashimoto's is a stage where it starts affecting the functioning of your body, and you do get low levels of thyroid hormone.
Just for context, antibodies are normally something we develop to fight something that we don't want in our bodies, like an illness or something. So in an autoimmune situation, it means we're developing these, but they're fighting against something that we actually do want and that actually should be functioning in our bodies, right?
That's exactly.
Cool. I understand.
Dr. Kate reporting on the podcast. Yeah. But yeah, just to know that this whole process takes time. How much time, you don't really know. I mean, how long does it take for you to become a type 1 diabetic? How long does it take for you to become symptomatic? It's variable. So you can have months and months of this low-grade inflammation happening in your thyroid, and you don't even know until you get to the point where you start getting the symptoms. But I want you to see this as a chronic inflammatory process. It's not just necessarily one day your thyroid is 100% and the next day it's malfunctioning. It takes time.
Takes time. So you mentioned right at the beginning that fatigue and funky blood sugars and weight gain are all important symptoms. And I was like, yeah, that's my life. That's everybody's life. But what I want to know is, how do we tell the difference between normal everyday occurrence of these type of symptoms? You're eating too much, not exercising enough, getting too little sleep, getting woken up by hypos. And so you're tired and your blood sugars are out of whack. How do we tell the difference between that and medically relevant fatigue, for example?
As a type 1 diabetic, this is something we should be screened for. So if you are having these symptoms, it is important to speak to your endocrinologist, or even ask your endocrinologist what were your thyroid function tests, because at least once or twice a year, you should have your thyroid tested, just because we have type 1 diabetes. And at least when you do go get this tested, it can rule it out that your thyroid is fine. You can go on to the next thing, or try fix and resolve, a different aspect of your health. Most of the symptoms of Hashimoto's are very vague and you can put down to your general day-to-day life, which is exactly what I did when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. All my symptoms, I thought I was thirsty because it was summer. I thought I was tired because it was very stressful in medical school. You can find a lot of reasons in your life for why you might be feeling that way. However, as type 1 diabetics, we always have to be thinking about our thyroid. So your common symptoms, it's fatigue, but it's not your normal tiredness. So if you have a fatigue that you go, this is just not me. This is not feeling, I think all at this stage now we know what our tired feels like, but it's a deeper fatigue. Waking up exhausted, needing naps, feeling heavy and sluggish, no energy despite sleeping. It's like a bone tired. Then, you do have weight gain. And I mean, there's a lot of things that can be playing into this. Also, when we are tired, we tend to maybe overeat. But if you look at you gaining weight, but you really haven't changed your eating, and you have to be very honest with yourself about this, you haven't really changed your exercise, but you're gaining weight. So none of those metrics have shifted in a huge way, but you notice the scale is increasing. The next thing is feeling cold. Everyone else is comfortable, relaxed, and there you are putting on lots of jerseys, shivering, reaching for a jersey. So just gauging with the people around you, are other people cold, or am I being like a little bit extra and needing blankets? And they're kind of going, Trace, that doesn't really make sense. Everyone is very comfortable.
For our UK listeners, a jersey is a jumper.
Oh, yeah. And isn't pants underpants, like underwear? Mm-hmm. If you say I'm wearing my pants, it means you're wearing underwear.
It is, yeah. Once at workout, we were going out and I said I was going to go upstairs and change my pants. And everyone was like, okay. Like freshly moved to the UK, trying to make new friends. And you're like, guys, I'm just going to change my pants. Not ideal.
Okay. Brain fog, forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, struggling to word find, poor memory. Then there's also depression and low mood. Now, if I'm treating someone with suspected depression, I do blood works on them, which include a thyroid function profile, because sometimes you might just have hypothyroidism that is contributing towards a lower mood, and not necessarily just organically depression. Constipation, the slow moving digestive system is quite common. Dry skin is rough, dry, itchy. Hair, you might brush your hair and just find clumps are falling out into your brush. So you lose your hair, it becomes a bit thinner. And then if you do have your bloods done and you see there's actually a change in your cholesterol, a cholesterol change might be an early sign that thyroid disease is actually potting around in the background. And then for women, you have menstrual changes. And this is just a change from what you used to, what your normal is. And now suddenly you might be having a bit heavier periods, more irregular periods, fertility changes. So it's kind of just seeing if there's a deviation from what you're used to. Some people also describe like muscle aches, general stiffness, muscle soreness, and general body aches. And that kind of also goes hand in hand with this like fatigue. So you might just go like, I might be coming down with something. Is it like a flu? But then it just persists. That feeling does not lift. So when you think of the symptoms, run through this list and just do like a little mental checklist of, how many of these symptoms are positive. Because if it's just maybe one or two, it doesn't rule it out, but it might be something else. But if you're listening to this and you're going, wow, all of these are a yes for me, I mean, without a doubt, this needs to be checked up.
But you don't necessarily need all of them in order to have Hashimoto's.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
You could have just one. It could just be one symptom. Diseases don't read textbooks. So it's, we would be doing everyone an injustice if we asked for this full checklist before screening. And as type 1 diabetics, we should be screened regardless because of our increased risk of having thyroid disease too.
And are there any symptoms that are specific to diabetes? Like, would we see this in our blood sugars at all?
Yes, it would be. And why it's quite difficult because there are so many things that influence blood sugars. This could be an additional one, but you might notice when your thyroid hormone levels begin to fall and your metabolism slows, you might have increased insulin sensitivity. The glucose production of the liver slowly decreases. This could result in more, say, unexpected hypos and lows, a change in your insulin requirements. Some people see more unpredictable blood sugars with increased variability, highs and lows, more corrections needed occasionally, just a lot of difficulty in finding your patterns. We become experts at pattern recognition, and we generally know our patterns as type 1s. And then if you suddenly see a shift in your expected sugars, that could be a sign. And then, often it does cause delayed digestion. So you have slow stomach emptying. So that might manifest in your blood sugars like a delayed glucose rise. Or after you eat, a lot of unpredictability in your blood sugars, and that mismatchment of your insulin timing and a stomach that is not emptying quick enough to like match with your insulin. That's how it can come up in your blood sugars.
Okay, so I know when I go for my blood test, normally I do see something about my thyroid on there. Can you tell us a bit more about like what will be on the blood test normally as a diabetic, and how actually Hashimoto's will be diagnosed?
With your thyroid, so there's we test a few things, and we call it just a thyroid function test to see how your thyroid is responding to the stimulus that says, thyroid, please make more thyroid hormone. And then if it makes the actual hormone. So the first thing that we'll look at is thyroid stimulating hormone, which is just TSH. So this comes from the pituitary gland, which sits like really snug inside your brain. It's this tiny little, very important gland. And that pituitary gland will release thyroid stimulating hormone to do exactly that, go and stimulate the thyroid. And it says, hey, please, can you make us some hormone? And then your thyroid in general will then go, sure, no problem. It listens to TSH, and then it'll produce some thyroid. Basically, if your thyroid is working well, it responds well. But if your thyroid is on vacation and not interested, tired, so it's inflamed and it's not responding very well, what will happen is a thyroid stimulating hormone comes along and the thyroid just looks at it dead in the eye and says, no, I'm not going to make anything. I'm not interested. I'll make a little bit, but not what you're asking of me, because that sounds like it's too much. So then what happens is your brain, then your pituitary gland produces more and more and more TSH to go and tell the thyroid and bombard the thyroid and say, you're not listening to us. Please make more hormone. So then sometimes what you'll see in your blood test is your thyroid stimulating hormone will be very high, out of range high, but the actual amount of thyroid hormone in your blood is normal or low normal. So that immediately says your thyroid is not responding very nicely to what your brain is telling it to do.
Okay, so we need to look out for our TSH levels being higher than expected.
Yes. And then the other thing we measure, is your free T4. So this is your main thyroid hormone circulating in your blood. So we'll measure TSH, the messenger, and then we'll measure the end product of what your thyroid is producing, so your free T4, to see how much thyroid hormone is circulating in your blood. So we measure those two things, and then we have a look at their relationship with one another to understand where the pathology and the disease is coming in from. In Hashimoto's, what you'll see is TSH will go up, and then your free thyroid hormone might be normal. But then as the disease advances and your thyroid becomes more inflamed and produces less thyroid hormone, TSH will stay high, but your free T4 will start to go down and deplete.
And you also mentioned earlier antibodies. So those are showing up when your body is attacking your thyroid. So is that something that you can test for too, that we can see if we have those antibodies present?
Yes, you can test for those. And there's some guidelines that say, like, as you're diagnosed, you should be tested for the autoantibodies for your thyroid. And then if they're negative, great. And then you continue to monitor the thyroid every 1 to 2 years, the thyroid function test, so your TSH and free T4. And I mean, other guidelines don't necessarily call for testing the antibodies, because if you do get a positive antibody, it does say, yes, there are these antibodies circulating your body and probably attacking your thyroid and causing inflammation of your thyroid. But we don't really do much about that, unfortunately. We would then just monitor you a lot more closer, stricter, to see that it's, say, stabilized, or to catch early where your free T4 starts to decrease and it's going to start to affect your body. So then, and then we just wait for that, in essence, and then, treat the hypothyroidism as needed. So I don't know, Kate, would you want that tested? Like, would you want the antibody test? Even if I say to you, well, if it's positive and your thyroid function is normal, we're not going to do anything about it. Do you still want to know that you have an antibody circulating around your body that works against your thyroid?
Yeah, I think in that case, I don't really see any point in testing for antibodies. I don't see how it helps. I think if you're screening properly and you're aware of the symptoms, that's probably the most useful thing. There's so many things that we can get as diabetics. There's so many health problems we can develop. And I think with any chronic illness, you've got enough to think about without worrying. Like, obviously you want to be educated, but I don't think you want to worry about every possible thing that can happen to you to try and prevent it, because then you're just a sick person before you're even sick, and I think we have enough of that anyway. Well, what do you think? Would you like to know if you have the antibodies?
I think if I am having symptoms, I would want to know. So maybe not as an asymptomatic individual where I look at that checklist and I go, no, I think that is all good. But if I started developing some of those 1 or 2 symptoms, I think it would be important for me to just know and rule it out. I don't know, because the question is, do you then manifest, the disease? If you know you have the antibody around, are you going to, I think you have to know your personality. Are you going to think about it, obsess about it, stress about it? Is it going to help you maybe be more proactive about looking after yourself? Or is it actually going to put you in a bad way? I don't know. I think I would want to know, though. Yeah. For me, I'd want to know.
I think the really important question with this, which is what actually probably could change my answer, is I don't really know what it's like to live with Hashimoto's. Is it treatable? It is super treatable, and I think that's what's really wonderful.
So what we do is we provide the patient with levothyroxine, which is basically just an artificial synthetic T4, which is a pill you take. Now, the medication is readily available, but it does take a little bit of tweaking and time to get your dosage right. So we start you on the treatment, and you have to come back for bloods to just check, are we underdosing? We don't want to underdose, we don't want to overdose. It's like finding the Goldilocks, like middle portion that it's just perfect. So that might take a little bit of an adjustment in your medication. But generally, someone who's symptomatic can go on the medication and see amazing results as well. Improved energy, better concentration, improved mood. It works, which is great, but it just might take a little bit of tweaking and some time to get the right dose tailored for you.
And are there any major horrible side effects to that medicine?
Not many side effects. The side effects really come in if the dosing is not correct. So if you are overdosing, you are going to feel like wired and restless and anxious and fidgety and hot. So on the other side of things, if you're overdosing, it's not a great feeling. But yeah, generally, once you're on the medication, you're on a stable dosage, like we'll monitor it every 6 to 12 months. Once you are stable, just to check that the dose is still working for you.
Okay. Well, I'm really glad that we talked about this, because I think, as diabetics, you learn the value of being informed and empowered and understanding things. And of course, your doctor will take the wheel, if you like, on things like this. And they should be monitoring it anyway. And they should be thinking about this anyway. But the more we know, the more we understand, the better we are able to, anticipate these things and, cope with them when they arrive. So it's not a shock. And as depressing as it might be to think about all the different things that can come out of type 1 diabetes, at least if you know about them, you kind of prepared in life for all eventualities. So yeah, I think it's really useful.
Definitely, especially when you are having these vague symptoms and you've changed your diet and you're sleeping 8 hours and you're just going out of your mind going, what am I missing? What do I need to do? It could just be diabetes. It could be life. It could be other stresses, but it also could be thyroid inflammation, and it could be Hashimoto's. So it's important just to be aware of those numbers. But it's common, yes, in type 1s, but it's very treatable and it can be missed if you're not being screened.
We also wanted to let you all know that we are starting to release our episodes on YouTube. They might not be out every week on there as of yet, but it's something we're working on. So if you're someone that likes to watch video and you want to see our beautiful faces, then do hop on YouTube and check it out.
Awesome. And if this episode helped you, please share it with another type 1 diabetic who might be wondering why they don't feel like themselves. And just spreading awareness will help someone else somewhere down the line.
If you're watching this on YouTube, then please like and subscribe. And if you're listening to the audio version, you can also find us on Instagram at Correction Dose.
Awesome. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.